Rotherham Council has been found to be in resolute denial about the extent of child sex abuse in the town and has been declared not fit for purpose. The entire cabinet is to stand down and government commissioners are set to take control of the council. An official report says the council is failing in its duty to protect vulnerable children and young people. The investigation started last year following the revelation that 1,400 children and young people had been abused by men, mainly of Pakistani heritage. Investigators found that the council had a deep-rooted culture of cover-ups. Our social affairs correspondent Alison Holt has the story.
Lying at the heart of the South Yorkshire town of Rotherham, a council where, according to today's report, there's a culture of covering up uncomfortable truths and failing to protect those who are vulnerable.
You could tell with my appearance. I went to 5.5 stone in different coloured hair. I weren't going to school, I weren't going home. There's no way that they couldn't have realised that something were wrong.
But again and again, this girl's voice and the voices of other children being sexually exploited in the town were ignored.
There were various authorities what knew what were going on.
This young woman was 14 when she was first abused.
A child protection officer, she ignored it. Someone from social services ignored it. There were various meetings about me, which was saying if there was anybody found to be dead, it'd be me.
The report examines the council's failure to act over many years. It found a local authority not fit for purpose, with a culture of bullying and ongoing denial.
I think over a long period of time, really, the council hasn't really listened to inspections, to reports, to people trying to get them to improve what they're doing.
The council's former leader, Roger Stone, refused to be interviewed by the inquiry team. He's described in the report as being a bully. Jahangir Akhtar, the former deputy leader, is said to have been liked by some but feared by others. Neither wanted to comment today. This afternoon, the Community Secretary announced he was putting in his own commissioners to run the council.
The crimes committed against children is so appalling. The council's remedy is so utterly inadequate. The government cannot, in good conscience, turn a blind eye.
They were abducted, beaten and intimidated.
It was the J report last August that found more than 1,400 children had been sexually exploited in the town over 16 years, with many of the perpetrators said to be of Pakistani heritage. An issue ducked for years. Now even this report is said to be disputed by councillors.
Oh, it makes me hugely angry.
For Dr Angie Heel, whose own warnings to police and the council 10 years ago were ignored, that's shocking.
Whether it's one victim or 1,400 or more victims, what she says stands, and whilst people continue to deny it, it kind of makes their whole situation worse. And as I say, it's an insult to the victims.
The team behind today's report has also passed files on one existing councillor and one former councillor to the National Crime Agency. The NCA says it's been asked to examine matters which are potentially criminal. Rotherham Council says its current leader has resigned and the Cabinet will go as soon as the new commissioners are in place. Alison Holt, BBC News, Rotherham.
Well, as the extent of Rotherham's failings became clear, the Home Secretary was giving details of the new independent inquiry into historical child sexual abuse in England and Wales. The original inquiry was announced 7 months ago, and today Theresa May appointed Justice Lowell Goddard, a High Court judge from New Zealand, to lead that inquiry, which will now have the power to compel witnesses to attend. Our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons has more details.
Could it be third time lucky? After losing Baroness Elizabeth Butler-Sloss and the Lord Mayor of London, Fiona Woolf, because they were seen as too close to the establishment, the government has searched the world for a replacement, and in New Zealand found Justice Lowell Goddard. She claims to have no agenda or preconceptions, and she's prepared to live in Britain and spend years hearing evidence about child abuse.
I feel that this inquiry is so important, and at the forefront of it are so many victims, more than 100,000, I believe, who really require and deserve answers.
She sits in New Zealand's High Court. She's led an inquiry into police handling of child abuse cases. She has been criticised for a ruling which defended a paedophile's right to privacy, but 2 other courts agreed with her. Today, emerging from a meeting with the Home Secretary, survivors of child abuse gave their support.
I have every confidence that this is going to be an excellent appointment and widely welcomed by the people who are at the heart of this inquiry, which are the survivors of childhood abuse.
This, 25 years ago, is one of them.
I would come home and there would be people there waiting for me, or I'd be taken somewhere else to meet men that I'd been told to make happy.
Becky, not her real name, felt hope when the inquiry was announced, but when it descended into chaos and arguments, like many, she was left confused and upset. The question is, can their trust be restored?
I'd say that as survivors, as a group, we find it very, very hard to trust. Whatever form the inquiry takes, there will be a section of people that can't trust that for their own reasons and because of their own stories.
The government today decided against a royal commission on child abuse, like the one underway in Australia, but it has beefed up the inquiry's powers. It will now be a statutory inquiry. What does that mean? Well, Lord Goddard will have the power to look at restricted police and MI5 documents, for example, and call witnesses whether they like it or not. They'll give evidence under oath, which means they'll need lawyers, and so the whole inquiry will be bigger and more expensive. The inquiry will cover decades of abuse and the response to it in schools, children's homes and other institutions. It could take 5 years to complete, and it's likely to delve into the heart of power itself. Tom Simons, BBC.
Our top story, to the most damning report about a local council anywhere in the country ever. Rotherham Council will now be run by central government after an inquiry into the child grooming scandal found failings from top to bottom. Some of the key findings were the council being described as not fit for purpose and failing to protect vulnerable children. It needed, said the author of the report, Louise Casey, a fresh start. In response, the cabinet of the council, including the council leader, resigned. Within minutes, the government said it was stepping down to run the town after describing the council as utterly inadequate. Now, that makes the scale of the intervention the biggest ever. Ian White has this.
It's been another day many inside the offices of Rotherham Council would rather forget. But too many blind eyes have been turned in this town in recent years. Today, a pledge from the government. Things are going to change. A highly critical report has exposed a local authority in complete denial about the town's child sexual exploitation scandal in which 1,400 youngsters have been abused. And it's revealed a culture of bullying, sexism and misplaced political correctness.
We collectively, in the public sector, let the children of Rotherham down and we let the residents of Rotherham down. And we all need to take a long, hard look at that and do a better job.
Could I welcome you all to this morning's meeting of Rotherham Cabinet.
It was business as usual this morning as the town's cabinet met, but by lunchtime they'd all resigned as the government said it was going to appoint 5 special commissioners to run the council.
This intervention package I'm proposing is broad and wide-ranging. It would only be justified in the most exceptional case. Rotherham is, I believe, such a case, a truly rare case, where the children of Rotherham have been so badly let down by those elected to serve them.
Rotherham deserves so much better than the system that it's had in place. So what we need is a clean break. So I really want to work closely with these commissioners, as do the other local MPs, to make sure that we can go forward and that the people of Rotherham can have faith again, that the statutory services that are meant to be looking after them are going to do just that.
Tonight, the National Crime Agency said today's report highlighted some potentially criminal matters. And one former Labour councillor said there had been a bullying culture within the authority.
I've even been criticised by Labour councillors for challenging the administration in scrutiny committees. Well, if you can't challenge the administration in scrutiny, where can you do it?
People in Rotherham said they welcomed the news. Things were now finally changing.
What they do need is a fit council, a council who come in, who can put things right and make people feel better so there's not animosity and people can get on with their daily lives.
They haven't done nothing for the children or anybody really. So, I mean, all them children what's been abused shouldn't have been abused.
The authorities' shamed offices closed tonight, with no leader and no cabinet running the town. The council has 14 days to reply to Eric Pickles, and even though the lights are on here tonight, it's not quite sure who will be responding or how they'll do it. Ian White, BBC Look North, Rotherham.
So what does this mean for how the council is actually run? Here's our political editor, Len Tingle.
Now, what's been announced today is unprecedented and will have a radical effect on the way Rotherham Council works. Basically, the government is going to run the council directly until Rotherham's sorted itself out. At the moment, the authority is run by a cabinet made up of 7 of the elected councillors. They determine policy, and it's then carried out by a number of senior council officers. Under Eric Pickles' new regime, that will be swept aside. 5 government-appointed commissioners from Whitehall will come in to set future council policies. If necessary, they'll also act as senior council officers themselves, taking on the role of chief executive, chief finance officer, the head of children's services, and they'll even take over the authority's licensing functions. And the community secretary has gone one stage further. He's demanding that all 52 councillors will have to put themselves up for election all at once in 2016. These all-out elections will then take place every 4 years from then. At the moment, like most local authorities, just 1/3 of the councillors retire every year, which means political change is slow. The message from the government is that on the evidence of today's report, the public will be given the power to change its councillors far more quickly.
Well, with me now is Dr. Victoria Honeyman, who is a lecturer in British politics at Leeds University. Victoria, how unusual is this?
It's really, really unusual, and it really speaks not only to the fact that we're in the run-up to the election campaign, but also the absolute scale of what we're dealing with here. It was decided after several reports, this is the last report that we've seen, that actually what was going on in Rotherham Council was just extraordinary and really couldn't be dealt with by piecemeal changes. It needed to be dealt with by a wholesale change.
So how difficult will it be in this scenario for the council to actually function at all?
It will really function in a very bare-bones way. The people that have been brought in by the Communities Ministry will essentially deal with all of the important functions of a local council, but how they deal with that will be dependent upon what they are essentially instructed to do by Westminster, rather than necessarily responding to local community concerns.
So local policies don't really come into play, possibly. The council could be run effectively by non-elected members. Are you saying that they could probably bring in their own policies to a certain extent then?
They could, but they are actually representing the government and the Communities Ministry, so they're not there to create an alternative set of policies. What they will do is try and stabilise the council. They will almost certainly look at the reports that have been released on this particular scandal and reform children's services very extensively. They will also look at other things like finance, see how that's been structured. So really it depends on the problems that they discover, and we're beginning to see that there may well have been more problems at Rotherham Council than simply one regarding children.
Now, ordering all-out elections next year is really breaking new constitutional ground, isn't it, as well?
It really is. And again, as Len was saying, it speaks to the absolute scale of this problem, that it's determined that some of the people that are actually involved in Rotherham County Council or Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council, really, the change is not fast enough, they're not going far enough.
Give you a nice, interesting lecture to put together anyway, Victoria.
Certainly
Thank you very much indeed. Police in West Yorkshire have revealed tonight that they've charged a large number of men with grooming offences. Dave Edwards is in Halifax for us now. Dave, what have they said?
Well, sadly, Harry, this demonstrates that Rotherham isn't the only place where serious allegations of child sexual exploitation are being made. Police here in Calderdale have arrested 25 men. Now, they are with offences including rape, sexual assault, trafficking, sexual grooming and supplying controlled drugs. These alleged crimes are said to have happened between 2006 and 2011, and most of them relate to one girl who was under the age of 16 at the time. Most of the 25 men are from Halifax, some are from Bradford and Huddersfield. They're aged between 23 and 42. They've all been released on police bail, and they're due at Calderdale Magistrates Court next Thursday.
Dave, thank you.
Child sex exploitation crisis in the town. Police say criminal charges may now follow. From Rotherham, here's our social affairs editor, Penny Marshall.
They just would not listen, and they did not do their jobs and protect our children.
Tonight in Rotherham, the voices of the victims are being heard, and those who didn't listen to them have gone. Local government here has been effectively suspended following the council cabinet's mass resignation just moments before being nationally shamed.
Mr. Speaker, it is with a real heavy heart.
In an unprecedented intervention, Rotherham will now feel the long arm of Westminster.
The crimes committed against children is so appalling. The council's remedy is so utterly inadequate. The government cannot, in good conscience, turn a blind eye. These are exceptional circumstances justify Whitehall's intervention.
It was a report published today which forced the issue, so damning was its verdict about the council's failure to deal with the grooming and child abuse on its doorstep.
Rotherham has essentially not faced up to some very difficult truths, not looking after children effectively, not dealing with an issue of ethnicity in all circumstances to do with the race of people that perhaps perpetrate child sexual exploitation. These are very difficult things to handle, I admit that, but nevertheless they need to face up to it and they should be doing a better job.
Today's report brands Rotherham Council not fit for purpose, highlighting its failure to protect vulnerable children from harm and describing a culture of sexism, bullying and silencing debate, even going to great lengths to cover up information and to silence whistleblowers. The report concludes that Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council needs a fresh start. But any fresh start's too late for the victims. Children like Susan, who aged 13, was abused by a grooming gang. She told me she was glad the council's leadership had gone, but she said she could never forgive those who'd failed her.
You wouldn't treat an animal like that, let alone a child. My childhood was ruined. I'm disgusted.
And her mother branded the council's continuing failure a disgrace.
At least now it's been put out there officially that they are not fit for purpose. I wonder how they would feel if it was their daughter. They want to sit and think about it. The police and the council, about how many lives they have ruined.
A council in denial.
Leaving work this evening for the last time, the council leader, Paul Lakin, refused to answer questions.
Will you not stop and talk to us?
The report said that he, like so many others, could have and should have done more. But Rotherham Council, according to this report, was more concerned about protecting its own reputation than its most vulnerable citizens. Central government will be sending in 6 commissioners effectively to run this local council until there'll be fresh elections in 2016. In a separate development, the National Crime Agency has said that there could be a criminal investigation as a result of today's report. Penny Marshall, ITV News, Rotherham.
Now to claims of historical child abuse, and after 2 homegrown lawyers proved too closely linked to the establishment to lead the abuse inquiry, the Home Secretary's third choice has taken her not quite to the ends of the earth, but certainly halfway round the world.
Step forward Lowell Goddard, a High Court judge in New Zealand, and there isn't just a new head of the inquiry, its panel is being dissolved. Our political correspondent Emily Morgan reports.
Rarely has something so important got off to such a bad start. The inquiry into allegations of child sexual abuse has been through 2 chairwomen, taken 7 months to get off the ground and lost the support of survivors. To that end, it's been scrapped, reset and given a new chair. This woman, Justice Lowell Goddard, will now lead the inquiry. An eminent High Court judge in New Zealand, she couldn't be further removed from the British establishment.
I come with no context in terms of the inquiry itself, certainly no agendas other than to work hard and get to the bottom of the allegations.
The new inquiry has also been given statutory powers, meaning witnesses will have to give evidence under oath. The timetable's still being decided, but Justice Lowell Goddard will arrive next week and appear before MPs. She'll then form a new panel with Theresa May, who's said they'll consider applicants from the previous panel. By the end of March, new terms of reference will be announced and the inquiry should begin before the election.
I am now more determined than ever to expose the people behind these despicable crimes and the people and institutions that knew about abuse but didn't act, that failed to help when it was their duty, sometimes their very purpose, to do so.
After a meeting with the Home Secretary, survivor Ian McFadden is cautiously optimistic.
This is not going to get kicked into the long grass. This is actually going to get started before the general election, which means whichever party is running the country after the general election has to continue the inquiry. So it's an important day today.
And you have faith they will continue the inquiry?
As long as I draw breath, there will be an inquiry.
Such campaigners and Theresa May will want to put the last 7 months behind them, but there is still a long way to go. The inquiry could take up to 5 years to complete, and the fragile confidence of the survivors is by no means guaranteed.
Hello, welcome to ITV News. This is the late update from Calendar. First tonight, the entire political leadership of Rotherham Borough Council has resigned following a damning report on the town's sexual abuse scandal. The National Crime Agency say they will examine potential criminal matters identified in the report, while the Community Secretary Eric Pickles announced 5 commissioners will take over certain departments and services within Rotherham Council following past and present failures in combating child sexual exploitation. David Hurst reports.
A council not fit for purpose, caring more for protecting its reputation than the young children who were being abused, according to today's report. It says Rotherham Council is in denial about the town's sex abuse scandal, with cover-ups and political correctness, allowing gangs of mainly British Pakistani men to abuse young girls over a period of 16 years.
The crimes committed against children is so appalling. The Council's remedy is so utterly inadequate. The government cannot, in good conscience, turn a blind eye.
Emma was just 13 years old when she was abused. She says victims and their families have been crying out for years for perpetrators to be brought to justice.
You sort of think, well, did we ever, any of us ever have a chance from the offset then of getting any justice or being helped? And the answer's probably no. I'm a mother, and I, as someone, a mother who lives in Rotherham, I need to know that when my child grows up, that they're going to be safe to go to park and they're going to be safe to go to cinemas.
Emma was one of around 1,400 victims between 1997 and 2013, identified by the J report last August. That was followed by resignations. Rotherham Council's leader Roger Stone, its chief executive Martin Kimber, the head of Children's Services Joyce Thacker, and the South Yorkshire Police Commissioner Sean Wright. And the police watchdog is investigating 10 South Yorkshire officers over their role in the child abuse scandal. But today's report says the council is still failing to understand the extent of the problem and failing to support victims. It says the authority's culture is unhealthy. Bullying, sexism, suppression of whistleblowers and a misplaced political correctness have cemented its failures. Today's report makes it clear that responsibility for the abuse in Rotherham lies with the criminals who carried out the attacks, many of whom haven't faced justice. But tonight there are still many questions to be answered by those in power who turned a blind eye to what happened.
David Hurst reporting. Well, earlier tonight our political correspondent Paul Brand spoke to the report author Louise Casey about her findings.
Well, I think in a way I didn't expect people to be questioning the 1,400 figure that Professor Jay had outlined. I didn't expect people to be kind of questioning methodology. It felt like a sort of shooting the messenger, and the history in Rotherham predating this cabinet, going back quite a long time, it's not listening to inspections, not learning from difficult things they've faced in the past. So it meant that the sort of confidence that we had as an inspection team in Rotherham just wasn't sufficient. And let's face it, these are children. We let down children in our society. Something has to happen on a big scale.
Are you concerned that this report perhaps tars everyone at Rotherham with the same brush? I mean, if you work there now, morale must be at rock bottom. Are you worried that this tarnishes the whole council? Well,
isn't that interesting? Because I think the report, in my mind, says very clearly we hold the leadership, past and present, both members and officers, to be corporately responsible, collectively responsible, alongside South Yorkshire Police for these failings. I can only state very clearly that I met countless officers, social workers, people on the front line, people in that building in Riverside House who do nothing but try their hardest by the people of Rotherham.
The author of the Rotherham report, Louise Casey, speaking there.